Hello everyone. I guess I should let you know now that this video is going to be me primarily talking about myself and how my experiences with Final Fantasy XIV have been thus far. It's going to be filled with a lot of personal moments as well as my own emotions, and it's really an important story that I just feel like sharing because I know I'm not the only one who can say with a straight face that my life has changed while playing this game, and I'm genuinely happy that I have played it thus far. Well, I'd also be genuinely happy if I can actually speak properly during this video too. Now this is going to sound, fairly cathartic, and that's probably because it almost certainly will be. But my hope is that maybe it can also be relatable and can provide something to those of you who are interested in listening still. And, if so, then it'll make me feel a little happy. And, well, it's kind of a long tale to tell, so I imagine it'll take several videos before we can get to the end, or I guess rather where I am currently, since, well, I'm still playing, and I'm still alive too. I'm not dead or anything, so, I mean, there's not really an end yet, so that's good, right? But I guess we'll just see how far we can make it in this first one, how much I'm willing to tell, how much I can remember, and I don't know, I don't really even have much of a structure or way about going through this. It's just going to be a lot of me talking. So if you're still interested in that, then well, I hope you can listen and get something out of this by the end. I also can't promise either how coherent this will actually end up being. If you're familiar with my videos, I'm kinda like to ramble off and go on tangents a lot, so we'll see what happens. But I am fairly confident in my own memory of the beginning, but I'm sure the middle will go by much faster as I start to omit details, and those days just kind of blend together in a lot more than kind of what's happened recently, as well as how it all started. So just a little disclaimer there. And I guess with all that out of the way, I suppose we should just get started. I suppose. I mean, video isn't gonna make itself. Alright, so in the summer of 2013, I just finished my sophomore year of high school, and summer vacation was laid out before me. Now, I had enjoyed many years of gaming, as it was really, well, still is too, one of my primary hobbies, and I started when I was fairly young, at around age 4. The three video game series that really got me into gaming were The Legend of Zelda, Resident Evil, and Final Fantasy. And yes, I was playing Resident Evil before I had even gotten into kindergarten, and I can blame my mother for that, as she loved to play the classic Resident Evil games and let me watch, transfixed each and every time. In the more recent years, I had, started, or I guess stopped following the Zelda series because I couldn't find enough interest to invest in the newer Nintendo consoles, but I have kept up fairly well with Resident Evil and with Final Fantasy. Although, in middle school and the start of high school, my primary interest was in the Call of Duty series, so I would play that with my friends from high school, and well, I guess middle school, since I started in middle school. And in 2013, after playing each Call of Duty game since World at War, the formula was stretching a bit thin for myself and for the friends I played with. We all started to kind of look toward different games and began to kind of split off and play our own things around that time, during that summer. I used to play a lot of Xbox 360 back then, but really since I retired Call of Duty back then in 2013, I think that was Black Ops 2, I haven't really dusted off the Xbox 360 I got for my birthday. It's a red one too, the collector's edition Resident Evil 5 red one. But yeah, I haven't ever really gone back since I stopped in 2013. Instead, I did start to play a lot more single-player RPGs on my PS3, and those were fun for the first month or so of the summer vacation. And they were good time wasters, but they just didn't have the same impact or depth as the times that I would just log on to Xbox Live and play Call of Duty or Halo Wars or something else, whatever crap I played with my friends from school. And then one night, just kind of sitting in my bed, browsing on my laptop, browsing YouTube, I saw a video in my recommendations feed, and it was a video detailing the character creator for the upcoming re-release of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, MMOs have never really been something I was interested in. I was far too young to even understand the concept of online gaming when Final Fantasy XI released, and the WoW craze just completely blew over my head, and other MMOs that I tried later on were just not great. But for whatever reason, watching someone go through the different options on character creator really interested me in this MMO that was still in beta called Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. I then decided to look up some trailers for the game, and I was treated to the very amazing A New Beginning trailer. That was my first time just seeing a trailer and just being completely floored by it. And after seeing that and seeing that the beta was available for me to sign up for, and that I could even play it on my PS3, I decided, I'm gonna go sign up for it. Because I never really had a very strong computer to begin with. I had a laptop, and it was crappy. Like, I had gotten it for my birthday a couple years prior, but it was supposed to be a gaming laptop, but it could not play very many games optimally at all. So the idea of ever playing a game on my laptop was completely foreign to me back then. And now I have a really nice computer that I saved up for at my job, and it works great, and I play a bunch of games on it, and it looks absolutely amazing and beautiful and fantastic. But back then, playing things on my laptop, it was not gonna happen. So the fact that I could actually play this on a PS3 really helped nail that in for me. So I signed up, and within a week I got accepted, and I entered A Realm Reborn's Phase 3, the closed beta, Phase 3. Now, I messed around in the character creator for a couple hours. I mean, a couple hours at the time, and even still now, it's one of the best character creators I've ever seen in a video game. I made several different characters. I made an Elzen, I made a normal-looking human, or Hyur, as they're called, and I finally settled on a female Keeper of the Moon, Miqo'te. Super unique, I know, but then came the classes. And I was inspired to shoot for the Bard after seeing the trailer, so I started off as an archer, and then I hit another road bump: my name. I was a bit unsure of what to even call myself at the time because, well, my gamer tag was just kind of weird that I had for Xbox Live, and honestly I was constantly changing it. I changed my gamer tag several times and probably spent the full price of a game changing my name over the years on Xbox 360. So I figured, this time I really wanted to be sure of what I wanted to call myself, even if it would only be inside of this one game. And I, kind of thought around for a bit, and I quickly settled on a first name, Fyuria, a character from a guilty pleasure RPG that I enjoy, called Record of Auguryst War, if you've ever played that. I think it's also called Auguryst Generations of War on Steam. Need to go back and play that sometime. But then came my last name, and for whatever reason, I thought of a light novel I had read recently called Gekko. I hope I am pronouncing that right. Japanese is hard sometimes. I just found it while browsing around Bakaski, which is a site that translates or fan translates light novels from Japanese to English, or whatever. And I just found it randomly after browsing around that site, and I read it within a couple hours. Really short. And honestly, thinking back, it wasn't even a particularly great or awful or even memorable story. It was an interesting mystery thriller of sorts, with some entertaining characters. I can still remember the basic premises of the plot, but actual details and stuff like that just completely over my head. Can't remember anything like that. And despite that, for whatever reason, I chose the name Tsukimori, the last name of the main heroine of that story. And I'm not even sure why I did, because it's not like I even loved the character or related with that character in any way, but I chose the name anyway, and that was my name, Fyuria Tsukimori. And so my journey finally began, and I was surprised at how intuitive the controls were despite myself playing with a controller, because I was used to MMOs being these things that you just kind of played on a computer. And when I had played, free-to-play MMOs back in the day for like a couple days, they were kind of clunky to me because I don't really play games with a mouse and keyboard ever. At least back then. I do play a couple now, but back then it was just completely foreign to me. But yeah, playing with a controller was actually pretty easy for me to catch on quick. And the only thing that was really bad about playing with the controller on the PS3 was the nightmare that I was trying to talk in the chat with with having to pull up the PS3 integrated menu for the keyboard. It was horrible. So quickly bypassed that by picking up a cheap USB keyboard from the store, like 20 bucks, plugged it into my PS3 and it was fine. But yeah, that was really actually quite surprised at how easy it was to control. I was expecting it to be a lot more difficult, and going on from that, I actually really fell in love with the game. It was just so beautiful and vibrant, and it was really different seeing so many others just running around and knowing that behind each character was an actual person, except for RMT, because I mean, I didn't even know what RMT was back then, but nowadays, I mean, they're everywhere. Well, they used to. They kind of fixed that in recent patches, but they used to be everywhere. But yeah, and I can't even imagine how I did in my first few days, but surprisingly I was able to pick up and learn things really quickly, and I had a ton of fun going through the main quest that was available at the time. I think you could only go to like level 15 or level 20 back then, and you could only get to like the first couple dungeons back in the closed beta. And seeing all those big fields, the zones with all the people in it, it was just completely different from anything I had experienced, since I didn't really play MMOs before then. Like, again, like I said, I tried a couple free ones, but they were kind of crap. So, and by the time I reached level 15 and had to enter my first dungeon, which was Sastasha, I got a bit anxious and messed around until the servers closed for the weekend, because back then, during the closed beta, servers were only open during the weekend, and you had to wait until the next weekend to try and get on the servers again, I guess. And even the following weekend, I was just kind of anxious about it, and I ended up just making different characters, going through the story again on different classes, and just started trying out other things the game had to offer, and just completely avoiding the dungeons because, I don't know, I was just super nervous back then, and I just didn't want to do it. Kind of like, trying to go into the raid for the first time. That's a completely different story, though. And, thinking about it, I kind of wish I wanted to go into things with a more friendly environment, because when I was playing Call of Duty, like when I first got introduced to it, I just kind of got strung along by my friends who had already been playing Call of Duty since Call of Duty 4 and all that. And when I got into it, I was completely fine just going into random games by myself, or without a party. And I just needed that push to go into something completely new and foreign to me, and also not feel like the unbearable pressure of having to live up to the other people who I don't even know. And it sounds crazy to some of you, but I mean that's what some people do feel. I mean, that anxiety is very real when you're playing online games like this for some people, and I was no different back then. And because of that, I tried to convince some of my friends who I played Xbox Live with and from school to try it out with me, and I only managed to convince a couple of them to try it out, because the game was actually preparing to enter phase 4 of the beta, which would be open to just about everyone who signed up for it. You didn't have to hope you get chosen like with the previous phases of the beta. And one of them wanted to be an archer, which is what I picked because I was going for bard. So I thought, what, I'll just go ahead and go with my second choice. Went with conjurer, and progress would actually carry on into the full game this time. So I suggested to my friends that we go ahead and try and log on to Midgard Summer, which was the server I had spent my time on during phase 3 of the beta. I had my character made right when the servers went up, got to around level 10. By the time my friends had even finished getting into the game, the game got updated and making their characters and all that. And by that time, Midgard Summer was completely filled and wasn't accepting any new characters. And so I nonchalantly agreed to one of the biggest and most impactful decisions of my life, to instead start my new character on the Faerie server. Now, playing as a healer, I should say, was completely different from what I had went through as the game as an archer and a Lancer, which is what I played on previously during Phase 3. And it felt really nice, actually, and for the first couple of weeks, healers were really in great need, especially out in the field. I mean, I saved dozens of people who got in way over their heads during their quests or hunting logs, aggroing things that they shouldn't have. And I just love the feeling of being a supporting character and, you know, just kind of being able to help other people. And when I entered the dungeons for the first time and healed that, I loved that even more. I even got the Acolyte's robe from there, I think that's what it's called, and it just felt so special at the time, even though it really isn't nowadays. The level 15 green healer, and I guess it's just mage robe that you get from Sistasha, Copperbell Mines, and what's the other one? Tom Terra. Yeah, that was what I got, and it felt so cool to get that at the end of the dungeon. Yeah, that's how back we're going. That's how far back. And yeah, Phase 4 ended, and when it was time for the full release of the game, I was the only one who actually bought it. You know, none of the friends that played with me during Phase 4 loved it quite as much as I did during the early access period. And during the early access period, I entered back into the game basically alone. I didn't have any friends to go in with me, and yeah, I was pretty anxious about that. You know, going into this completely new MMO genre that I spent very little time in. One of my friends said that, you know, they considered purchasing the game at a later date, and, you know, we talked more, and we even agreed to create our own guild, or I guess free company as it's called in Final Fantasy XIV. I figured I'd let him lead it since, you know, he was experienced playing things like WoW, and I never knew anything about leading or anything like this. I prefer to be one who followed in support, and I definitely never led my group of friends to anything really. Being a leader just wasn't within my personality, but, you know, since I was the only one with the game, it fell on me to create the free company myself. And we decided to name the free company Animus Phantasma. Fancy sounding name, kinda cheesy now that I think about it. My friend came up with the Animus part, and I just took the Phantasma part from Rosa Phantasma, a term from an anime I'd watched recently and quite enjoyed called Madoka Magica. I gathered the resources to create my own free company and ran into a new problem, and that was I needed 3 signatures from 3 random people to sign my free company so I could get it registered. And so I was stuck once again. I thought I'd just wait for my friend until, you know, he got his own account, and then we'd be able to gather 2 others, or he would actually. Although the next day he said he wasn't even sure when he'd get it, so he just told me to just go find 3 others in chat and, you know, just shout it out. And so I just kind of overcame my anxious nature and just used the shout chat to see if anyone would join, and surprisingly, it was actually really fast. You know, at the time it was a day after the official launch, so it was August 28th. And most of the free companies I saw were only like large ones, like Orange Pico, I think was one. And it's still active today, even on Faerie, Orange Pico. And then amazingly, I actually got, you know, my 3 people who just wanted to sign it, like within just a couple of minutes. It actually really surprised me. And their names were Mercuria? I actually don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. If you're actually watching this, I doubt it. Halabel, and another person named Witch. And suddenly I was leading my own free company, and it really didn't know what I was doing. I honestly, 4 years later, I still don't even know what I'm doing, but, you know. But I even told them that, and, you know, when I signed the free company, we got it all made, and we became our own free company and everything like that. I told them, I was like, you know what, I don't even know what I'm doing. And Witch, who was presumably an experienced MMO player, decided after a while that he was just gonna go look for his own group or his own guild that, you know, was more suitable for him. So he left pretty much almost, you know, after a couple minutes, and then it was just 3 of us. And you know, that didn't really do much for my self-esteem back then, but the 3 of us did work together to gather more members, and we did manage to gather quite a few. Some stayed longer than others, and some left only after a short time, just like Witch. And among the people I remember well was Mitzi, Akani, and Pedro. And they were more friendly than the other, or more friendly like the other 2, I guess. And we managed to get along well for the most part, although Mitzi didn't really talk too much with me. The friend who said he would consider getting the game actually never ended up getting it. And so I actually ended up playing with completely new people at the time. You know, the people that I played with on Xbox Live, my friends from high school, I didn't even play with them. in Final Fantasy 14, and I didn't even go back to play Xbox Live either after that. In fact, I still haven't logged onto my Xbox or even have plugged it in since I unplugged it 4 years later. So, I mean, well, stuff happens, right? But I mean, it wasn't all bad, right? Because I ended up finding new people to play with, and some of them became some good friends of mine. So it wasn't too bad. But moving on from there, I unlocked Scholar. I got the appropriate levels in Conjurer, and got my Arcanist to level 15, and I got Scholar unlocked. I also got White Mage unlocked at the same time, and got my Unicorn. And funny conversation I remember reading in Shout Chat at the time was like, "Oh man, healers are really rare," and you're like, and some other guy was like, "Yeah, sometimes you can just kind of see them riding around in their unicorns. They're just as rare." And nowadays, I mean, everyone's got a freaking unicorn, right? But back then, it was pretty funny to me. I don't know why I'm remembering that. I'm sorry. I like to ramble on if you haven't noticed, but yeah. But after getting to the mid-30s, it was around the time we got, or at least I got into the optional dungeon, the Sunken Temple of Karn. I actually wanted to go back and try out Bard. Since the friend who ended up playing Archer in Phase 4 didn't actually play past the beta, there was no point in me not playing Bard, so I went back and unlocked Bard, and actually finished the story and reached max level on Bard first. It was about a week after launch, and through everyone's efforts, we managed to actually gain quite a bit of people in our free company. It was about 20-something people, and although it was really only a handful that I mentioned, who I really was able to talk to and get along with well. Mercuria was probably the most proactive of us all, really, and honestly, I think she should have been the one leading it. She invited her sister to join, and I got along with her fairly well too, and she was constantly inviting new members and making suggestions on how to section off things like the company chest to assign different ranks in the free company. And she sent me lots of letters too when I was offline and she wanted to suggest something or ask me a question. And she also called me something weird. For whatever reason, she addressed me as Suki. I didn't really think much of it at the time, and I responded naturally to the name too. There weren't really anyone else in the free company who could be mistaken for a Suki, and I think I asked her once why she called me that, and she just said it was faster and easier to type than Fyuria. And I suppose I couldn't really argue with that reasoning, because even recently I've had people shorten my name to Fyu or FYU, and I meet random that all the time that just type that. So I guess Fyuria is a hard name to type, or people don't want to type it, I don't know. So that happened, I guess. And within a couple more weeks, passed, and others started to reach the max level too. And I'd run things like Emdapur Keep with them, help them gather tomes for their Dark Light gear. You all remember that. Mitzi was also a bard back then. Pedro was a paladin, and Akani was a warrior. And we really were the only ones at max level in the free company at that point. And we started looking at the Relic Quest weapon, and that big hurdle. Big hurdle back then. Trust me, it really was back then. But nowadays it's a complete breeze. But back then, man. And I spent a lot of my spare time leveling other classes and jobs to max level then too. And I even managed to get my Scholar geared and Dark Light gear as well. Since Mincy was a bard too, I started to play Scholar more to kind of help diversify things within the free company. And again, it was a much different experience for me. I still hadn't quite returned to White Mage yet, and in fact it would be the second to last job I'd actually get to 50 back then, not including the gatherers and crafters, because I wasn't even touching those. That was not my cup of tea back then, and it still isn't. Still isn't. But I will get them leveled eventually. I've been procrastinating a lot of leveling in Stormblood recently. I'll get around to it. But it was around this time also that I started to notice a more reserved and quiet person in the free company named Kiara. And she was starting to open up a bit more and ask more questions. She played Dragoon, and I often spent time answering things and helping her level in dungeons like Stone Vigil and stuff like that to help get her to max level to be with us and all that. And one time when we were talking, I noticed that she also called me Suki. I remember commenting on it, and she said that she thought it was just how I like to be addressed since everyone else had been calling me that. And at that point, I just kind of noticed, kind of retroactively too, that everyone in the free company had started calling me that, and I didn't even notice really. I don't even actually remember being referred to as Fyuria more than a couple times back then, actually. And you know, Mitzi, you know, Kana, Pedro, everyone has started calling me that that were in the free company, I guess. There's only a couple people who I didn't know that well that just called me Fyuria still. And it was weird, you know, and when it all began, it was weird, and I don't know how to really explain it, because I mean, looking back, you know, when it all began, you know, when I first started playing, I'd been so anxious and unsure of myself, and you know, just within a few weeks I had met so many new people, and some of them would all go on to become good friends. Some of them would go on to leave as well, and I wouldn't ever see or talk to them again, at least, you know, how it is now currently. I haven't talked to some of them in a while. We'll get to that later, I guess. And while I have no issue helping others and answering their questions like I did back then, I still didn't think myself much of a leader back then. And looking back, even after 4 years, over 4 years now, still leading this free company, I don't think I ever really was much of a leader. Just kind of there, really. And I was in charge of things like, you know, changing the ranks and changing the company chest and permissions and all that, and buying houses, but really I didn't really think myself as much of a healer back then. And you know, back in the moment when things were just beginning, it's kind of weird to think about this long journey I've had with Final Fantasy XIV, and thinking back to it when I first talked to Kiara and she helped me realize things, this one thing that I couldn't help but smile a bit to myself and be filled with a little sense of pride. This little thing, a warm feeling that had just stirred my heart a bit. And it was just weird, something that some people might not even think much of. You know, some people just get things like this all the time. They don't think anything of it. But for me, it was something special. And it was just a name. A nickname that everyone just had decided to address me by without me ever once asking or telling me to. It was just kind of thrust upon me, really, now that I think about it. But I mean, I'm not complaining really, because really it was well, it was really one of the greatest gifts I've ever received in my life. Just a name. And that's just how sentimental I am, I guess. And yeah, you know, I think that's a good place to start for today. And yeah, I should probably wrap this up before I get wrapped up in my own sentiment and maybe shed a few tears. I'm not that sentimental. But yeah, how long has this been? Wow, it's almost been half an hour. Wow. I'm sorry I talked so much. I really do. But yeah, it feels so weird just thinking about it. But yeah. Anyways, before this gets even more awkward, like I said, I mean, I'm just sitting here talking about things that I remember from memory, and if I don't even know what to say, really. This is a bit embarrassing, but I mean, if you watched to the end, then thank you, I guess. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and if it was an interesting story, then I'm glad I entertained you a bit. And you know, maybe I'm not crazy and I'm not the only one out there like this. I hope I'm not. And there are other people out there too who feel or have some special story that they've had playing this game or any game really, and the people they meet while playing and all this stuff. I mean, again, this is just one small part of the beginning of this journey I've had playing this game, and I don't know, I'm both excited and a bit nervous to share that with you, because I mean, there's a lot of personal things that happen, and you know, not all of it was great, you know, not all of it was happy. I mean, just like with anything, there are ups and downs, and there's high times, low times, happy times, and sad times. But you know, it's everything that happens that brings us to where we are now, and it's the things that happen to us that help make us who we are now. So I think it's always important to reflect on everything, not just the good things, but also the bad things. And sometimes, you know, sad things aren't always bad. Sad things are just, well, it's it's like I like to say, I mean, sad things, when you're sad, it's actually a beautiful thing because it helps prove that you cared about something. So, alright, I'm getting way too sentimental, so thank you all for watching. As you just learned in the past 30 minutes, my name is Suki, and I'm really blessed and glad that I was given this nickname, and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. It was, like I said, it was one of the greatest gifts I've ever received, and maybe that sounds really corny and you don't really understand that, but to me it really is one of the greatest gifts I've ever gotten, and it makes me really happy when only the few friends that I have left in Final Fantasy XIV still call me that. So, and you guys too now can call me that. So, yeah, thank you all for listening. I don't even know what I'm gonna put as on the screen. Maybe I'll just dig up some old footage and just throw it on there, because I mean, again, I just kind of decided on a whim to make this. So, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to the story, and I don't know when I'll do more of it, but we'll see what happens. If people want to hear more, then I guess I'm willing to do it. I'm not promising it's gonna be great or anything, but it is a story. I mean, I have learned a lot from playing this game and from the people I've met, and yeah, it's been a one long journey, and it's not over yet. It's not over yet. So thank you all for watching, and thank you for, I mean, you guys haven't been part of the story yet, but you guys will become part of the story sooner rather than later. So when that happens, then I'll thank you again. But for right now, thank you also for being a part of this learning experience in this story, this journey that has changed my life in some way or fashion. So yeah, that's enough sentiment. I really need to just end the video, Suki. End the video. Thank you all for listening, and let me know what you guys thought in the comments below, because I'm curious to know if you actually did listen this far, what you thought. And if you have your own stories, then you know what, I'd love to read those types of things too, so be sure to share those too. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Sayonara. Bye bye.